All right, guys, time for a revisiting Japan video just because I get asked about, I guess, the relationship stuff, sex, culture, etc. I guess in Japan. And not that I'm an expert, and I've only lived quotation marks in Japan, you know what I mean? But I guess just to talk about that stuff again because people still message me. My experiences of being to Japan is when you see those videos of people who are like, oh, is it okay to cheat in Japan? You know, do people care? Whatever. In a lot of those videos, and I've said this before, things like loveless marriages, loveless. You know, I shouldn't say loveless, but the idea that it's okay for the husband to go to the city and to fuck a girl, maybe a younger girl, you know, however old they might be. And this idea that it's okay, all that stuff is totally true in my experience going to Japan, as my nipple is about to show. And, you know, on some level, it's kind of weird, but I think the more that you go there, and maybe if you speak a little bit of Japanese, you know, maybe if you're a friendly person, if you people watch, whatever it might be, you can like kind of understand it. And people ask, you know, maybe it's because it sounds unbelievable. Because, you know, I got a comment again today on one of the videos asking about it. And it's just like, what I said in the videos is my experience of how it is, dude. Like, I mean, let's turn off the phone just to make sure this isn't, I'm sorry about this. Ruining production values. Sorry about that. You know, maybe it's unbelievable or something like that. But I've said before, geez, last time I was there, it was just as I was on the park bench, and then this girl came up to me, and we just started talking. And you know, her English is very good, right? So we're able to talk. Not just, you know, normally when I'm talking to a Japanese person, it's like my broken Japanese, their broken English, or just Japanese period, I guess, right? It's never all English, but her English is good, so we basically could speak English. And I was even like, what do you think about you know, people going to Tokyo, whatever it might be. Or, well, we're still in Tokyo, but people got to remember when you say Tokyo, Tokyo is really big, right? It's not just, you know, Tokyo is Shibuya, Shinjuku, Harajuku, you know, Akihabara. You know, I lived in Inagi, I guess you could say for a little bit, lived, quotation mark, Sangonjai. All this stuff is still technically Tokyo, right? But there's this, like, let's say there's this ether. There's like an ether of like the city life compared to, you know, I've said before, you know, suburban life, you know, maybe, you know, you go to like a small, more quaint sort of area. Like I said, Inagi is very sort of, you know, it's more kind of like a suburb, right? And it's very quiet and it's very like peaceful. And then you go to the city, and not that the city is necessarily loud per se, but it's more energy. Definitely more energy. It might be more energetic is definitely a way you could describe it, right? But you know, things are very like docile, right? And very peaceful and very, you know, it's like something out of a movie when you see people in a suburban life in Japan because it's just so peaceful and like happy and whimsical sort of thing, you know? But then you go to the city and God, I'm like rambling. And it's because I've told these stories so many times, and maybe it's just that it doesn't seem believable. And maybe even me as a kid, you know, when I used to watch things about Japan, I'm like, is that really how it is? And you got to think that, you know, the city is its own ether, right? The city is like its own, you're the own ether. When you're not in the city, you know what I mean? You're probably at home studying all day, or maybe you're working, whatever it might be, or you're that quiet suburban life. And when you go to the city, that's the one time in life, or you know, that you actually are quotation marks maybe free. And then you even think about Japan, and you think about like the Peter Pan syndrome kind of shit, whatever, you know, all these animes are always about, you know, people in middle school or high school or something like that, because that's the main time in that you have in your life when you're free. And even, I don't remember, maybe it was my first time in Japan, you could actually start seeing like those age demographics of people would be happy, very peaceful, whatever you want to call it, getting off the train, whatever it might be. But then you saw this like glimpse. Sometimes you would see like, oh, that person is at like the end of their like high school life, maybe. Like they're about to go into the workforce. Their life is over. Maybe, you know what I mean? For however many years, right? So whatever the case, that sort of city ether is the one time that you get to be different. And you think about Japan as very kind of, again, I've told these stories so many times, maybe it's just hard to believe unless you've been there for a while, but Japan is very, I don't consider Japanese people necessarily like nice per se, but they are very non-confrontational and very non-malicious. They just let me do my thing, you do your thing, I'm not going to bother you, right? And so, it's going off onto a tangent, whatever, right? And, because there's not a lot of maliciousness, like that girl, like I said, I was at the park, on a bench, whatever. She came up to me, started talking, and I'm like, what do you think about all these, like, that huge age demographics of like people going to the city and maybe they got a wife, maybe they're just going to go bang this young girl, whatever. And she's like, oh, I think it's totally fine. And she's just like, she's like, oh, I thought about doing escort stuff when I was younger too. I was just worried that I wasn't like maybe cute enough or something, right? And that's just something you got to see it. Like sometimes it's got to be like driven into your brain. You got to see this stuff so many times and be like, this is just the way it is, right? And it's like, when you're in the city, that's the one time that you have in your life to be free, maybe, quotation mark. This is when we have our time to be free. And I was watching one Japanese video, and there was some comment, and it's actually kind of an interesting comment. I don't remember exactly what they were talking about in Japanese, but to paraphrase, they're comparing the freedom to actually being like anarchy or something. And it's actually kind of interesting, especially though you think about that little devil square in like Shinjuku or something like that. Like how free can you be until it starts becoming like anarchy? And I was reading some of the comments and I'm like, what's the difference between freedom and anarchy? And, I'm just rambling. People just want to hear the sex stories or something, but you just get to see that and you see, and again, it's the double-edged sword of that, when people are so non-malicious that, no one would ever hurt anyone. I guess the pessimistic way that you could think about that, and, apparently true, you know what I mean? If people are so non-malicious and you care about people so little, then maybe you don't care about someone to actually be truly empathetic. There's I think I made a video about before too, like Japan has a very sort of high standard of empathy, but it never crosses that line of being truly sympathetic because you don't really talk to people, right? Like a high sort of standard of regular empathy, but not an actual empathy. Like there's like a threshold for it, right? That goes on with the Omoyari and the Gaman sort of thing. But I guess, when you're talking about like sex culture, you see why people would do that, you know what I mean? Because you're like, well, that's, it's kind of like, what, if these younger girls are here, you know what I mean? They know why they're here. This is the one time in their life that they get to be free or something like that. And maybe this is like the husband dude. He's like, well, there's not going to be any room at home to fuck my wife or something like that because we all live jam-packed like sardines. So the wife is just, what? As long as the husband gets the sex out of his system and he comes back home and we're like in this together and we're like the family, then it's okay if he gets out his like sexual desire. And the thing is, it's okay for the girls to cheat though too. You might think that only the guys do it, but I've been there. I've had girls be like, oh yeah, you're the, of course people like, maybe it's not this way for everybody. Like maybe, people would stop me. And I think I said, was it last time or the time before? I don't remember, but people had already recognized like, oh, you're a Final Fantasy guy. Oh, you're a Disney Prince guy. Yeah, we remember you. You know what I mean? Blah, blah, blah. So maybe I have like some street cred to a very small level, right? It's like, oh yeah, we want to be with the cool American guy. You know what I mean? So I don't know, your mileage may vary, but definitely, girls would be like, oh yeah, I have a boyfriend, but it's okay if I were like to cheat on you, right? So, I've had girls be like that, and sex is kind of casual in that kind of way. And that's not to say, of course, like every place is like different. Like, when I think about Americans, I think, America's very holier than thou, right? You know what I mean? people will pretend they don't do things or act like they're so self-righteous or again holier than thou, but then on the down low they're fucked up. Quotation marks fucked up. I really think that the hypocriticalness is what makes it fucked up, right? Everyone has desires to certain varying degrees, but once you start becoming hypocritical, that's when I think it's actually, the problem. But in Japan, it's just kind of like, you know what? Like, let these people do their own thing. You know what I mean? Let them do, if the guy wants to go fuck this girl, if the girl wants to cheat on her boyfriend, this is the city. This is this ether. It happens here. It's okay. And, I talked to that one dude, one of these catcher dudes. I guess I've talked to multiple catcher dudes, but there's this one Japanese catcher dude, and me and him would talk, and, broken Japanese, broken English. And, when he was on, I don't know if he's on break or something, but sometimes he would just see me, like, sit down with me, and we talk for a few minutes. And, we talked about this a little bit. And, he even was like, he's like, yeah, he's like, it's okay, again, not to paraphrase. He's like, it's okay because it's here. You know what I mean? Like, older guy fucking a bunch of younger girls, it's okay because it's here. I make him sound like he's Spanish. It's okay because it's here, chico. He didn't have a Spanish accent. He didn't have a Spanish accent. God damn it, Bob. Do the right accent. I don't know what a Japanese accent is. So you would see that, or he would be like, it's okay because you're here. He's like, we wouldn't do this. We don't act this way like in the suburbs. But if you're here in the city, it's understood that this is kind of stuff might happen, right? I mean, so, and God, and I talk about what was it? The fucking, talking about people caring about each other, whatever. Again, I'm rambling so much because I've told these stories so much. It's just like a matter of fact, I feel like, but, say that one girl, you know what I mean? She like, and of course this isn't that, God, Jesus Christ, not that like girls haven't asked to fuck me before, younger, whatever. In America, it doesn't matter where, right? You know what I mean? But there is something like maybe you think that, it's so sort of blatant. And I told that story before, that young girl like picking me up. And I was like, are you even old enough, dude? And like people like even heard me like say this and they're like, what the fuck's wrong with you? You know what I mean? It's Japan. Nobody cares. You know what I mean? But I'm like, are you sure, dude? Like, I'm like older than you, like quite a bit. It was just like so, it was so matter of fact and so blatant, I guess you could say, right? But then, go back to the house or whatever, and you ask if she's okay, and she started crying. Like, no one in my entire life has ever asked if I'm okay or not, right? So, when I talk about the non-maliciousness of Japan, right? Maybe that's a story. It's like, it's just kind of like, God, I'm going to make this sound like romantic. So romantic right now. Get some flowers all over the place, right? I think maybe sexually from a certain perspective, you think that, the man fucks the woman, right? The guy fucks the girl. The boy fucks the girl, whatever. You know what I mean? Generally speaking, the girl doesn't fuck the guy unless something else is going on. Or maybe she's got a strap on. I don't know, right? But you think of the girl is giving her body to the guy. She's entrusting you with herself, right? Let's say, right? And of course this happens, everywhere. Japan is it's just like such a matter of fact, though. Maybe girls are even a little bit more obviously submissive, I guess, in Japan. But it's interesting, I guess, psychologically, when you think of that, it is so casual to trust another person with your body, so to speak, but to have not even the sliver of truth that person cares about you, which is kind of interesting, I think, right? And, of course, just in general, when I say like a guy fucks a girl doesn't fuck the guy, right? Of course, maybe just psychologically as a woman, there's a bit more of that level of, God, how do I explain this and phrase this so that, like, the woman likes that excitement more so, maybe, I guess. the excitement of what is this man going to do to my body? Maybe a little teeter tottering, more of a woman perspective, right? You know what I mean? Like, but I guess I'm trying to like think of how to like phrase it. It's interesting because again, I just think about that, a girl could so casually be like, hey, I want you to take me home, right? I guess I would there, like, I can't speak for all women, but I would think that when I'm in America and I've had girls want me to fuck them right, you know what I mean? There's probably that sliver of feeling of, you know what I mean? Like, excitement. Oh, what is this guy going to do with me? But there's also that sense of like trust that he cares or something. I'm not sure to say. But Japan is just like the girl, like they trust you that you wouldn't hurt them because it's like a matter of a fact that, oh, no one would ever do anything with me. No one would ever hurt me. You know what I mean? This is like, we know this is our one time in life that we would trust this sort of like unspoken rule. You know what I mean? Which should be it. You would hope that's a rule of just the world that no one would ever hurt anybody. But anyway, I just think I wish I knew how to explain. Because I'm thinking about it like too deeply and like logically, and it's like hurting my brain. Again, it's just weird because again, I'm trying to like put. It's just again, it is weird when you think about that. Again, not a woman, but it is weird to think that a human being could trust another human being to just absolutely ravage them, fuck them completely for an entire weekend, and then be like, you want to know if I'm doing okay? But it's such like a that weird sort of level of Japan empathy of like, it's a matter of fact that no one would hurt anybody. But do you actually care about anybody? Not to that level, right? And it was like, it like blew her mind, right? Her brain exploded. I'm going off on a tangent. Obviously, that's obviously that image in my head of that girl crying when that happened is still, it's like affected me. I should have fucked her. God, it would have been great because she was, you know what I mean? She was nice, but I should have asked if she was okay after. But I guess it gives me a story to tell. You know what I mean? But anyway, I guess Japan. Sex culture, why is it okay, these huge age gaps? And it's because no one would ever hurt anybody. But because of that, the double-edged sword is that people also feel like, well, if no one ever would hurt anybody, they must not actually care about me, which is that weird sort of like gray, probably like psychological kind of zone, you know what I mean? And like I said, I heard that one story. I don't know if it's true, but it sounds fathomable to me that one girl asked all those other Toyoko kids, whatever, you know what I mean? How do I kill myself? And they fucking told her, and then she killed herself, which is fucking dark as fuck. But it seems fathomable to me. You know what I mean? Just, ugh, God. It's fucking, like I said, it's scary, right? But anyway, and the guy was also like, well, if it's so easy to have sex, why is what did that dude say to him? If it's so easy to have sex, why is Japan not having much sex, right? Well, again, there's the situation of like, you live jam-packed like sardines, you know what I mean? So there's not a lot of places to have sex. Of course, people have sex in public, and I've heard stories of people having sex in karaoke bars. This one guy told me this crazy story last time I was there. He was like, I was just walking down the street. He watches my YouTube sometimes, so he's told me that. So if you hear this story, he's like, I was walking down the street, I saw this old guy try to pick up the girl, but the girl's like, no. And then the girl saw him, and whatever it was, she's like, I do actually want to get fucked right now, or something like that. And they just went to a corner, and she started sucking him off, or something like that. And then she just pulled off her panties, and she's like, just fuck me right here. And he had, I guess he had some post-nut clarity after the blowjob, and he's like, whoa, if this girl's going to fuck me within 5 seconds, maybe I shouldn't raw dog it. like this in the alley. And so I think he told me he didn't do it. He just got the blowjob, right? If he watches this video, maybe he'll post. I don't know. But you know, I don't know. Like I said, when I think about, but yeah, no. So you know, places, you know, karaoke bars. I've heard people having sex, but you know, there's also this thought that like if you have enough money to, let's say, if you're paying for the Love Hotel, and I mean, I've had girls tell me that they would pay for the Love Hotel. So it's not always the man, but you know, if that's my train of thought again. You know, if you can afford to be having sex at like a Love Hotel all the time, you know, it's like, well, then you probably could have afforded to have a better place, your own place, with more space to have sex as well. So I'm sure, you know, there's a lot of things go into it. And like people don't really talk to a lot of people, you know, so it's like, there's just so many different combining factors. And you know what? I know I always go back to it because that's what's interesting to me psychologically about Japan is just the non-maliciousness of Japan is the psychologically fascinating thing to me. And that sort of gray area of empathy of no one would ever hurt anybody. Not that I've never heard of anything bad happening in Japan, but no one would ever hurt anybody, yet no one actually really feels like they care about any either. And it's like this sort of like hazy, fuzzy area. And it's interesting to watch, and it's interesting to see the non-maliciousness of it. Because again, I like the non-maliciousness because, you know, you would hope that in general, nobody wants to hurt anybody. But because, you know, I guess the world isn't all fairy tales and roses, unfortunately. The world is a pretty shitty place, but you know, again, I just keep going back. I'm gonna say it over. I probably said it 50 times. The non-maliciousness of Japan is like, you know what? You're not gonna hurt me. I'm not gonna hurt you. So it's okay. Maybe it's taboo or something like that. Maybe somebody thinks it's weird. Maybe it thinks it's weird that, you know, I'm gonna cheat on my boyfriend with you, or I'm gonna cheat on my wife, blah, blah, blah. But it's like there's no feelings involved. It's just like a sexual urge. It's contained in this ether, so it's okay, right? I don't know. Maybe it works like that in Japan because Japan has such a sort of contained ether of it exactly like that. I don't know, but you know, I've talked about these topics so many times. I don't know, but that's what's interesting to me about Japan. Well, there's lots of things that are interesting, but I don't know. Remember, if you like the videos, like, subscribe, comment, share, support the channel if you want. I appreciate it. Thanks. The end.